Te Koto Te Whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Te Koto Ngā Manahiri, no mai, higher mai ki tēnei whare karakia a te atua. Te Koto tēnā tātou katoa. Not bad. Welcome this morning, this day, and this opportunity to be together in community, which is a time of joy, comfort, and sometimes challenges. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is a place where we come to learn more about being human. We're not here because we figured out life's questions or because we think we got it right. We come here to learn more about being in relationship together, how to listen, how to forgive, how to be vulnerable, and how to create trust and compassion in one another. So we will move into worship willing to be authentic with each other, honest within ourselves, and open to connection in all its forms. We light this flame for the art of sacred unknowing. Humbled by all that we cannot fathom in this time, we come into the presence of what we do know, perhaps the only thing we can know, that love is now and forever, the only answer to everything and everyone in every moment. Please join me in the covenant and your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. Please stand, if able, to sing Spirit of Life. Before I had any notion of ever being a minister, several events conspired to change my direction in life. One of them was going to a lecture by Henri Nouwen, who inspired me to read his latest book, Reaching Out. The passage that interrupted my plans to get a doctorate in organizational development and go to seminary instead was this one. He wrote, "While visiting the University of Notre Dame, where I had been a teacher for a few years, I met an older, experienced professor who had spent most of his life there. And while we strolled over the beautiful campus, he said with a certain melancholy in his voice, 'You know, my whole life I have been complaining that my work was constantly interrupted until I discovered that my interruptions were my work.' Don't we often," he goes on to say, "don't we often look at the many events in our lives as big or small interruptions? Interrupting many of our plans, projects, and life schemes. Don't we feel an inner protest when a student interrupts our reading, bad weather, our summer, illness, our well-scheduled plans, the death of a dear friend, our peaceful state of mind, a cruel war of ideas about the goodness of man, and the many harsh realities of life our good dreams about it. And doesn't this unending row of interruptions build in our hearts feelings of anger and frustration and even revenge? So much so that at times we see the real possibilities that growing old can become synonymous with growing bitter. But what if our interruptions are in fact our opportunities? If they are challenges to an inner response by which growth takes place and through which we come to the fullness of being? What if the events of our history are molding us as a sculptor molds his clay? And if it is only in a careful obedience to these molding hands that we can discover our real vocation and become mature people? What if all the unexpected interruptions are in fact the invitations to give up old-fashioned and outmoded styles of living and are opening up new unexplored areas of experience? And finally, what if our history does not prove to be a blind, impersonal sequence of events over which we have no control, but rather reveals to us a guiding hand, pointing to a personal encounter in which all our hopes and aspirations will reach their fulfillment? Then our life would indeed be a different life, because then fate becomes opportunity, wounds a warning, and paralysis an invitation to search for deeper sources of vitality. Then we can look for hope in the middle of crying cities, burning hospitals, and desperate parents and children. Then we can cast off the temptation of despair and speak about the fertile tree while witnessing the dying of the seed. I've entitled this musing this morning, Plaguing Interruptions. I find myself a little more at peace this morning. We have once again eliminated COVID-19 from the community, and the election season that felt like it would never end is now over for another 3 years. Perhaps now life can go back to the way it was, a 2019 normal. Phew. I wasn't sure how much more I could take, for neither pandemics nor elections necessarily bring out our better angels. But who am I kidding? We will never turn back the calendar. The way it was has been irretrievably interrupted by a plague of biblical proportions. How will it play out? It's a question that has been explored as long as there have been pandemics. In an outbreak of the disease in 4th century BC, Athens, people, quote, people became contemptuous of everything, both sacred and profane, according to the historian Thucydides. Shakespeare lived his entire life in the shadow of the bubonic plague. Born April 26, 1564, a few months before a new outbreak of the plague. Besides the one following his birth, he survived severe outbreaks in 1582, 1592 to 93, 1603 to 1604, 1606, and 1608 to 1609. plague constantly appears throughout his work in the form of everyday exclamations. A plague upon it when thieves cannot be true to one another. A plague of sighing and grief. It blows a man up like a bladder. A plague upon this howling. A plague of these pickle herrings. But this is a sign less of existential angst than of deep familiarity. The acceptance of plague as an inescapable feature of ordinary life. His acceptance, or perhaps resignation is a better word, is revealed explicitly in Macbeth, written during the 1603 outbreak. His lines conjure up a country so traumatized that it no longer recognizes itself, where the only smiles are on the faces of those who have somehow not followed the news, and where grief is so nearly universal that it scarcely registers. He writes, "Alas, poor country, almost afraid to know itself. It cannot be called our mother, but our grave, where nothing but who knows nothing is once seen to smile, where sighs and groans and shrieks that rend the air are made, not marked, where violent sorrow seems a modern ecstasy. The dead man's knell is there, scarce asked for who, and good men's lives expire before the flowers in their caps, dying or ere they sicken." Shakespeare seems to have doubted that the world would ever be a medical solution to the plague, and from what we know of the science of his time, his pessimism was justified. He focused his attention instead on a different plague, the plague of being governed by a mendacious, morally bankrupt, incompetent, blood-soaked, and ultimately self-destructive leader. Clearly, present life is imitating art. In his book, The Plague, French existentialist philosopher and author Camus tells of a plague in a small town in French Algiers. The novel relates the town's leaders' initial denial of plague. When they finally accept the truth, it's too late. The hospitals are overflowing. Many are dying. When they quarantine the town, some try to commit suicide. Some try leaving secretly. Smugglers become rich while the priests preach that it is divine punishment. As the situation worsens, the authorities shoot people who try to flee. They declare martial law to control violence and looting, conduct funerals without ceremony, or concern for the families of the deceased. Gradually, people become despondent, wasting away both emotionally and physically. The plague continues for months. An anti-plague serum is developed, but it doesn't save even an innocent child. The priest argues that the child's suffering is a test of faith. The priest soon dies too. There is a hero in this story, an atheist doctor who continues to treat the afflicted, risking his own life. He is revolting against the absurdity surrounding him. Instead of committing suicide or fleeing into religious faith, He chooses taking responsibility for his life, enjoying the goodness and beauty around him, and by creating his own meaning in an objectively meaningless world. He does this by struggling against suffering and death, even when his efforts predictably fail. This is what a hero does, fighting defiantly against absurdity. For Camus, the plague represents this absurdity. There is no justice regarding who lives and dies from the plague. There is no rational or moral meaning to be derived from it. Religious myths or angry gods don't explain it. The gods watch the unfolding calamity with arms folded, either unwilling or unable to do anything. The plague is neither rational nor just. Moreover, wishful thinking doesn't help, but instead it distorts reality. Miracle cures won't work, and real cures aren't right around the corner. Life is fleeting. Our lives are ephemeral. Neither wealth nor education completely shield us from microscopic pathogens. Yet people forget all this. They're surprised that they're vulnerable, that their status or accomplishments don't improve immunity. They shouldn't be surprised. For the plague is everywhere. People suffer and die. Psychopaths create havoc. Nations commit genocide. We live in a plague-filled world. The plague is always with us. Our lives can end at any moment. Death doesn't await us at the end of the tracks. It's right here, now. It's a constant companion of our transitory lives. Eventually, the plague will kill us all. In the book, Camus' hero asks, but what does it mean, the plague? His answer is, it's life, that's all. Later he says, all I can say is that on this earth there are pestilences and there are victims. And as far as possible, one must refuse to be on the side of the pestilence. That's what's true of all the evils in the world is true of plague as well. It helps humankind to rise above themselves. There are more things to admire in humankind than to despise. Camus' conclusion about what we should do, express care and concern for our fellow travelers, and try to help them. The problem with this remedy is that doing so often requires interrupting our plans. Better to hope others might interrupt their lives to help. Social psychologists have been studying something they call the bystander effect for 50 years. They're seeking to understand what the conditions are that motivate people to refuse help to those in trouble or to simply look the other way. One of the theories is that the more people there are around, the more likely they will choose not to interrupt. I'm sorry, lost where I was. They will choose not to interrupt their plans by helping. But there are numerous examples that challenge their theory. It's 9 February 2016. At 3:45 in the afternoon, a mother parks her car on a canal side street in Amsterdam. She gets out and heads to the passenger side to take her toddler out of the car seat, when suddenly she becomes aware the car is still rolling. She barely manages to jump back behind the wheel, but it's too late for brakes. The car tips down into the canal and begins to sink. The bad news, dozens of bystanders see it happen. No doubt even more people hear the mother's screams. But then something unexpected happens. The owner of a real estate agency on the corner thinks, car in the water, that can't be good. He runs to get a hammer from his office toolbox, then sprints right into the icy canal. Another bystander is already swimming towards the sinking automobile. And then a third bystander is in the water too. At the last instant, a woman hands the estate agent a brick that later will prove crucial. A fourth bystander grabs an emergency hammer from his car and is the last to dive in. We began bashing on the windows, the estate agent recounts. They tried to smash one of the side windows, but no luck. Meanwhile, the car tilts and dips nose down. It was finally the brick crashing down on the back of the window that cracked it. After that, everything happened very fast. The mother passed her child to one of the bystanders through the back window. For a moment, the kid gets stuck, but a few seconds later, they managed to work the toddler free. One bystander swims the child to safety. With the mother still inside, the car is inches away from going under. Just in time, the remaining three bystanders get her out, to be greeted by others along the street with blankets to warm them up. Not 2 seconds later, the car vanishes into the inky waters of the canal. During this pandemic, there have been countless stories of those who have interrupted their lives for the sake of others. Even in these dark times, there is hope for humankind. Interruptions may yet save us. Amen. Let us stand, if able, to sing our closing hymn. Please join me in the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the community, or the power of faith. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. My closing words are by Kendall Gibbons. There is finally only one thing required of us. That is to take life whole, the sunlight and shadows together. To live the life that is given us with courage and humor and truth. We have such a little moment out of the vastness of time for all our wondering and loving. Therefore, let there be no half-heartedness. Rather, let the soul be ardent in its pain, in its yearning, in its praise. Then shall peace enfold our days and glory shall not fade from our lives.